Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 139 of the Sports Daily College Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. Got Mike Koomar with me. And Mike, the season is over for college basketball. We will have the Michigan UConn recap tomorrow when Joe returns from Indianapolis. But there's been sort of a lot of long term overarching college sports things here. A couple of them. One of them we're already seeing in action, the new transfer portal dates. We did talk about it a little bit in that North Carolina video. But the transfer portal opens today. When we're recording this, this is the day after the national championship game. Players can tell their coaches whenever they want, hey, I'm entering the transfer portal. But in terms of like contact and visits, official visits, dead period, all that, the portal opens today. The dead period ends on Friday. This was definitely like a common sense decision, right? To
Yeah,
not hamstring teams that somehow were still playing into the second and third weekends.
absolutely. And it also prevented some of these big time teams from poaching, guys that were literally still playing basketball. Um, so certainly you can appreciate that the NCAA got it right. I think you'd like to see it extended a little bit further, even, wait to open up the portal until a week after the season ends. But waiting until at least the season's over is it's good. We'll take it.
And especially not only for the teams that are still playing in the NCAA tournament, like, but the NIT still went until the Final Four weekend, and
Yeah.
so did the
The Crown
Crown
as well.
also. So those players were playing for their teams, and then they can still go move on to another team if they want. So a couple of days ago, also in this grand scheme of things, Mike, the president passed an executive order on college sports. It was pretty, pretty wide ranging, and it's an executive order. So this is not a politics podcast, but not super sure if this is going to hold up. The courts would obviously have to back it, and based on the courts and the NCAA, not a particularly good relationship there, and when it comes to a one-sided dominant affair, the NCAA has been getting their asses kicked in the courts. But basically, there's a number of things in there. The president wanted to use his federal authority to support the enforcement of clear, consistent, and fair rules on eligibility transfers and compensation. While promoting sustainable revenue sharing for the student athletes and the schools. There's a lot of words in here, Mike, but the main takeaway is that number one, you have a maximum of 5 years to use up your eligibility. You get one free transfer, and then some of the smaller schools that can't compete in revenue sharing might have a little bit better of a shot. But this is not the rule as of yet. If it does become the rule, what would you think about it?
Yeah, I think if this was the rule, it would be a good thing. We'd finally have some sort of regulation and continuity with, you know, the rules because that's something that we don't have right now. And part of it is look, the NCAA needs to have very clear, definitive rules, which they haven't done. There's always this, this waiver process, this back and forth on if Chandler Morris can have a seventh year of eligibility and Trinidad Chambliss can have a sixth. Look, the NCAA needs to have very clear rules on this, and they're kind of washing their hands a little bit, but they need to be more definitive. But at the end of the day, the president of the NCAA, he's stated that he really feels like he needs congressional support on this. So look, I think the courts are probably going to strike this down.
It
And at
just
the end of
takes
the day,
one, right? It just takes one judge,
yeah,
one
just
place
takes
to strike this
one
down.
court. Yeah, exactly. One little district court somewhere. However, like still simultaneously, there's bipartisan work on Capitol Hill right now to try to get a bill passed by Congress, which that would be significantly harder to get overturned by the courts when there is a actual congressional law in place, not just an executive
Especially
order.
if it's supported by both parties, which I think it's going to be so far.
It is,
The
yeah. It's Senator Cruz and Senator Maria Caldwell or Cantwell, who's a Democratic senator. So, like, if a bipartisan bill is passed, I mean, Congress should probably be worried about a lot of other things. But regardless,
yeah,
this would be big for college sports and big for the enforcement, um, so that we don't have people playing, 25-year-olds playing 17, 18-year-old kids as a freshman in college.
yeah,
Now, I
and
will say this though. And although we've had a lot of crazy nonsense with players playing fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth years of college basketball, this college basketball season, this goes into the state of the union of college basketball. It was dominated by freshmen. The sport
until
was dominated by freshmen this year.
the championship game, really.
Yeah,
But
but
Michigan
you,
still had a great freshman, Trey McKinney.
yeah, this season was run by freshmen. And I think that's what was incredibly impressive and a little bit encouraging, as even if this doesn't pass, which it probably won't. Um,
This exact
there's still some,
specific one probably won't. There'll probably be some tweaks.
yeah, absolutely. But look, if this were to stand and this what Congress passed and it got signed by the President of the United States, I think almost all college sports fans would be on board with it.
And on the official White House website, Mike, there are a ton of quotes from people on the president's committee for sports. It's a basically the commissioner of all the major conferences, and then a few other figures like Randy Levine, who is the president of the New York Yankees. He sucks, by the way. He is awful. But just wanted to throw that in there because he stinks. But the rest of these, like Nick Saban, obviously, all of these comments, Charlie Baker, we've got Greg Sankey, Tony Petiti, Jim Phillips, Brett Yormark, Val Ackerman. You've got everybody based. John Calipari was down here. They all are saying, like, look, something needed to happen. We've got to be able to protect the well being of the student athletes. And it's funny here because John Calipari says I have no problem with athletes making money. Well, that's not really a new thing for him specifically.
No,
Um, but
not at
yeah,
all.
and so look, saving college sports might be a little bit of a jump, um, because this basically at this point right now it means nothing. But there is
Yeah,
no commissioner for college sports, so there is no higher power in this country than the president and the executive branch of the United States. And if it goes to the judicial branch, um, I think this will get somewhere. It just might take a little bit of time.
absolutely. And look, I think it's at least a good sign for the state of college sports, specifically in college basketball. I
And
think this is a good start.
somebody cares. Somebody out there that can
Yeah,
do something about it cares. Um,
yeah,
so
exactly.
we'll just have to hang in there and see about that. All right, point number three, Mike, which is probably going to take the longest here. Um, it seems like the inevitable is coming. There were reports over the weekend and at the end of last week that the NCAA is strongly considering a plan to expand the tournament to 76 teams. From my understanding, this would be just basically an expansion of the first four, call it the first 12 on Tuesday and Wednesday. You would most likely need another site alongside with Dayton. It does appear that the round of 64 on Thursday and Friday on will be the same. Can't entirely be super surprised with this news. It's just a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, look, I think you're really diluting the value of the NCAA tournament by adding more teams. Adding another 8 teams to this does not make this a better tournament. It really doesn't. If anything, it just creates more bad games. And I get it. The NCAA is trying to find more ways to pinch pennies and make some more money, and this is a way that they can do it because they can get more teams involved, and have a bigger bubble. But one thing I encourage the listeners, and I know some of them may have emotional connections to teams that have been, the first four out or the next four out over the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Have any of those teams actually had a real chance of winning the national championship? And
Absolutely
sure,
not.
maybe Auburn could have won a game. West Virginia last year could have won a game or two, maybe Indiana. Um, but none of those teams at the end of the day were going to make the Final Four or were going to go to the national championship game. And at the end of the day, what is the point of March Madness? It's to declare a champion, right? And so we're not trying to make more points for exposure. I think that's the idea that people love. It's like, oh, more exposure, more madness. Alumni from different fan bases get more excited about this. That's not what an NCAA tournament's about. It's about declaring a champion, an undisputed champion And adding 8 teams to that doesn't make this any better.
So that would be 8 at-large teams, Mike, because there are no more automatic bids to give out.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
um, the although the new first 12 games would be 6 games Tuesday, 6 games Wednesday. To my knowledge, they'll be half at-large teams, half automatic bids. So that means that there would be 6 games with automatic bids. So I think all 4 16 seeds would be playing games and then 2 15s, if my math is correct there. And then depending on where the automatic bids meet with the at larges, we're going to have at least three
Yeah.
11 seed playing games and 3 10 seed playing games. They could potentially get bumped down here or there depending on like how good the top automatic bid team is.
Yeah.
But based on, like where South Florida was this year, for example, they probably would have been in that, next 4 out range. So maybe there's a 12 playing game, an 11 playing game, and so on. But yeah, the bracket gets a whole lot messier when you introduce 12 playing games rather than just 4. So from that point of view, obviously it is going to speed up the timeline when it comes to like brackets and stuff like that from Selection Sunday to probably Tuesday at noon, which would be the first game.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about too, some of these teams that probably had, undeniably a chance at making the tournament, are now going to have to play a playing game against another schmuck team that probably doesn't deserve to be in. So I think that even worsens the case for some of these teams that were in the first four that were probably deservingly in the tournament. Now they got to fight even harder to get into a game that they've got a chance to win to get to the round of 32. So I just think this is really foolish, Sean. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't better the sport. Maybe it makes a couple of alumni from a certain obscure school a little bit more happy. But honestly, if my team didn't deserve, to get into the field of 65 before, or even the field of 68 now, I don't really want to watch them in March. If somebody told me that the Baylor Bears were playing the NCAA tournament this year, I probably would have puked. I wouldn't have want to
Which,
watch it because it would have been so ugly.
I mean, I didn't, there's no like official next 4 out for the committee. They stop at the first 4 out, but
Yeah,
like Baylor would have been going to the Big 12 tournament, Mike, with a chance to make the NCAA tournament.
yeah,
Auburn would have made it. Indiana would have made it. Now, look, I think Indiana has a lot of. Indiana's been in this spot 4 times in the last 9 years in the first 4 out. And I think one of those 4 times, I think like I was genuinely bummed and I thought the team really deserved to make it. I thought that was
yeah.
last
Last
year.
year, yeah.
This year, like that team had no business play. The teams that
No,
made it into the tournament didn't have any business playing in it. We saw
exactly.
SMU, who fooled the committee that they had a player back when they really didn't, and they stunk anyway. You had Texas, who ended up putting some things together, going on a run. Miami, who had an unbelievably one of a kind, lucky slash unlucky season at the same time that nobody turned out to be any good that they
Yeah.
played. They got their win, they moved on. And then the fourth team in the first 4 was, who did Texas play? Oh, NC State.
Mm,
NC State.
yeah.
They didn't really deserve to make it either. They were sputtering down the stretch. So if you're putting in like let's say NC State versus Cal, that is just a game that we don't need to see.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
But
It's just a
I
waste.
yeah, I don't I think there's a different it's hard, right? Cuz it's like the college football playoff. There's a different amount of teams that deserve to make it every year. And you don't know what
Yeah.
that number is before. In the first year of the 12 team
But it's
playoff,
never been 76.
yeah, well, definitely not. But in the first year of the college football playoff, there was probably 8 or 9 teams that deserved to make it. This year, there was
Yeah.
probably more than 12, 15 to 16. And the year that it was, the year with like a ton of bid stealers a couple years ago, maybe 2024, where Indiana State missed, St. John's missed, Seton Hall missed, a ton of like
Yeah.
okay teams missed the tournament. That would have been a great year to have 76 teams. But then this year, we probably would have been okay at like 57, 58 teams.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and actually, Mike, the let me amend what I said earlier about the automatic bids. There will be one more automatic bid next year because the Pac-12 is back.
Yes.
So 31, 32 bids next year from the 31, but
Yeah.
still seven more at large bids. Yeah, I don't think
But the
anybody
whack is
wanted
gone.
this, but the back is
So,
gone. So maybe not.
yeah.
Maybe not. Well, it doesn't. Look, the teams that get in and that
Yeah.
will be playing in Dayton or the other location, I just don't see those games being particularly interesting. Honestly, at like 4 o'clock on Tuesday,
Yeah.
are you really going to be
Not at all.
firing the TV on to racing home from work
No.
to put that game on? I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
So I think this is one of like the most agreeable things that society can come across in the year 2026, and yet they're still doing it.
Bad. It's diluting the quality of your product.
So when it comes to this expansion to 76, Mike, we talked about, let's just give some ideas. I think Dayton rocks for the first four. I think it's a perfect sized arena. They always have it. It's become a tradition. There needs to be another location. What do you have some suggestions for first four location number two?
I think they're going to have to go further out west. And the reason I think they're going to go out west is because you've got some of these teams. Look, Texas did it this year and it was incredible. But they had to play in Dayton on Tuesday, I think, and then Portland on Thursday, or maybe it was Wednesday and Friday. I don't know. But regardless, that's a really tight turnaround. So I suspect you're going to have a little bit more westward expansion with that. Um, College basketball loves to be played in Kansas City. I don't know what it is about the NCAA. They love playing basketball in Kansas City. So I think that is a really solid option, especially because there's no professional teams that play at the T-Mobile Center there. So that would be a big one. I think Oklahoma City could be another one, or even Salt Lake City. I think Salt Lake City probably a little bit less ideal because there's a little bit of an altitude adjustment for some of those programs that you might not want to introduce. But I think Kansas City right now would probably be my initial pick for that further west one.
Yeah, because it has to be in that like Goldilocks zone, right? Like Dayton is not. I mean, I guess you could call it a city, but it's not that big. It's pretty close to other things. That arena
Yeah.
is probably only 7,000 people. Like you don't need an NBA or NHL arena to host the first four. So I think
No.
Oklahoma City, Kansas City, those were actually the two names that I saw up first. I think
Huh.
if they want to push it out to like a like the pit for New Mexico, like maybe they go to some
Oh,
cool,
that would be cool.
maybe if they go to like some cool college arenas like Grand Canyon's
Yeah.
place, which I'm forgetting the name of right now, or maybe they could go somewhere like that's like a legit on campus arena like UD Arena, and figure that out, because I think it would be cool to see to sort of in the day and age where everything's different every year, the sites, the regions, the Final Four, the one constant of the tournament has been Dayton. I think it's been really cool. My team played in it once. There's always one fan base that really cares about it and shows out. Obviously, the Red
Yeah.
Hawk fans had to drive a couple miles down the road, but yeah, that's just a fun exercise to go over. When we did our pretend conference tournaments, there probably will be a new location Tuesday and Wednesday of the tournament, and I think they would be best suited to actually have it be there every year rather than a
I agree.
rotating model.
Yeah, I agree.
But it turns out the rest of the sites for next year are out for the tournament, round of 64 and on. So I don't think that there's going to be, a whole lot of change there if the round of 64 stays the same. We're going to be staying in Texas for the South Regional. It'll be in San Antonio, out to Los Angeles for the West Regional. Midwest Regional is in Kansas City. That's a
Yeah.
little bit of a South Midwest Regional, and then the East Regional is at the world's most famous arena at Madison Square Garden. The
Doesn't
Final
get any
Four
better.
will be up in Detroit. So that's just obviously fun to look ahead. I think they do a pretty good job of scheduling out these sites. See if you if you live around the country, you're close to one, or could you do a day trip to one? It definitely looks like that could be the case next year. But
Yeah.
in terms of the State of the Union, Mike, I don't know if there's any other big things to add. But you got anything?
Yeah, I think really the one of the bigger themes about the overall state of college basketball this year was confusion, right? So much confusion about eligibility. We had James Najee into the picture, which didn't even need a court order. It was technically good to go, right? And then you also had the Bediako confusion. So you had just a lot of weird questions. I think that's one big takeaway from this year is just lack of clarity with a lot of these things, and creates a lot of artificial drama. The second one is, look, blue bloods aren't really blue bloods anymore. And I don't say that in terms of, the UConns and the Dukes. They still obviously have the resources, they have the coaching. They're going to be at the top notch of the sport anymore for, indefinitely. But the Kentuckys and the North Carolinas, those aren't jobs to die for anymore if you've got a program that's successful anymore. As long as you've got money and you've got a good system that supports you and you're able to recruit and retain talent, that's the real cheat code in all of this. So that's why you're able to see Iowa State. Look, they were one injury, tough injury, probably away from being a Final Four team. Yeah, maybe not Final Four, but they would have at least made the Elite Eight against Michigan. Um, and so you've got so many teams that now have a chance to go to the Final Four and even cut down the nets there. And so I think that's the one exciting thing that really comes from NIL is that multiple teams have a chance to do this. And I think the final thing, and I already alluded to this earlier, freshmen still have a chance. They still had a little bit of a resurgence this year. Look, Michigan had experience, and that was really clutch. I think every single Final Four team had significant experience, but almost all of them had at least one big time freshman that was able to carry the load for their team.
Yeah, the freshman thing is might be like a one off in terms of this magnitude. Like, there's not going to be a draft class like this ever again. I don't think, and I don't think there ever was. But in terms of bringing in, freshmen that can stay in your program and build a little bit of, experience within your program, I think that is going to be something that's important in the age of the transfer portal. Michigan did have, a bunch of transfers, but they had three players that played for Juwan Howard and a couple of transfers who came in last year under Dusty May. So
Yeah.
they had they had basically everything, right? They had the high profile transfer in Yaxel. They had the two transfers in Elliot Cadeau and Adai Mara, who were highly hyped recruits, disappointed at their first place, back to where they were supposed to be. And then you have, depth transfers like Roddy Gale was a starter at Ohio State. He turned in a nice role. So I think the age of like the puzzle pieces still matters, especially in the day and age where depth is not really a thing anymore. Um, good players want starting roles, and there's somewhere for them to go to start. So I think depth
Yeah.
is really not that it's not as important, but it's just not as much of a thing as it was in the past. Like, we don't see teams play 10, 11 guys anymore simply
No.
because they just don't have them. Michigan and UConn, I think, played three or four guys off the bench, and that was like as far as teams went. So I think depth is something that is probably not going to come back. And then the last thing that I'll say, Mike, is that coaching really matters. Not that it ever didn't, but when it comes to like coaches who win. Like, you have Dusty
Yeah.
May who won games at Florida Atlantic, and when he came to Michigan, there's a little bit of, okay, is this going to translate? Winning translates at any level. Maybe not to the same degree, but Ben McCollum was at
Another
D2
great example.
school 2 years ago. He has a bunch of players from that Northwest Missouri State team that won there. They won at Drake, and then they won enough at Iowa to make the tournament, and then they pulled off an upset, two upsets actually. So I think winning actually matters. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter the level now that we're seeing a real blurring of the lines between high majors and low majors.
Absolutely.
But Mike, that is our college basketball state of the union. Like I said in some of the other videos, we're gonna have a ton of transfer portal stuff, state of the program stuff coming up. So please check out those when they come out. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.